your time to dwell on some of the issues. We have said it is identity paradox because the issue what we are going to discuss, the impact of AI, what we are going to explore, it is a bit paradoxical. And what challenges it imposes on an identity platform like UIDI. We are going to dwell on that. And this is a conversation which we intend to do with the industry to seek your participation in solving some of these real challenges that we do see with the advent of AI. For centuries, identity is always anchored with the physical presence. When you see somebody, you always believe that he's real. When you see a signature on a check, the whole financial institution works around that fact that if they see a signature on a check, they believe that it is real. And on the identity card, if you see a photograph, you trust that this person is genuine carrying the identity card. Now, with the advent of internet, what happened? This identity verification shifted from physical domain to a remote kind of verification. The verifiability context came into the play. Like, if I can verify a biometric which is being offered through whether in front of an assisted, in an assisted mode or in a remote process, I trust that person. So that's the verifiability aspect came with the advent of internet. Now, along with the verifiability also came deception. Certain amount of deception was always there. In the physical, when the physical presence was getting trusted, that time also deception was there. With the remote verification also deception was there. But what happened with the AI? The deception technique became industrialized. The way the fake voice, fake biometrics, fake facial image that is getting generated, I wouldn't be wrong if I say that the deception technology has matured well ahead of the time, and that's why today we are trying to understand how do we stop those deception techniques and ensure that the broken story of seeing is believing is not going to be a reality. How do we protect the identity platform? So before I move on to some of the opportunities, I would like to take a pause and set the context. So if you look at the hard problems of identity, what are the hard problems? The first is inclusivity. And why it is more so important? Because this is a foundational layer in any DPI structure. And inclusivity is very, very important. So how it is going to impact when we are speaking in reference to AI, how inclusivity matters. The models that we use today at UIDI, we have a bunch of models which are helping us to protect our platform, identity platform. They're all inclusive in nature. We are rich as a country. We are rich with diverse set of demographics. We have people from various, I would say, various geographies that helps us in training our model and making sure that our model is unbiased and it is helping to ensure inclusivity. But going forward, can this inclusivity be extended to the certain set of people who are still not accessing this technology? For example, today we have face authentication in our portfolio. Is the face authentication is completely inclusive? The answer is no. Some subset of special people still, they are not in a position to access the face authentication. Can we do something with the user, with the help of technology, and bring them onto this portfolio? That is something we would like to have a conversation with the industry. Privacy if you look from AI point of view, privacy may not be a directly concerning, AI may not have a direct impact on the privacy, but why we are speaking of privacy over here is, like we used to, whenever we used to go to any networking conference, we always get to hear this, that UIDI is rich with data. Yes, true, we do have the largest catalog of biometrics data. We do have 170, 140 crore of Aadhaars with us. We have the demographics, we have the documents. But is this data accessible to us to train the model? The answer is no. We are still a responsible organization. We believe on data minimization, usage of the data of a Aadhaar holder. We do have guardrails to use this data for any kind of model building. Now, why I'm talking this with the community over here is we need to understand, we need to think about the technologies that is required to leverage this data in a privacy-preserving way. Some of these technologies are already being discussed in many forums, but what we need to do is put these technologies into the reality, right? So that's the privacy part. The trust is like that any identity platform, why our AUAs and KUAs or our partners, they trust the identity response that we give, because they believe that we have done adequate verification and deliberation when we give out a response to a auth request. So that trust needs to be preserved, rather it has to be reinforced in the AI domain. Now, moving on to some of the engineering challenges, scale and latency. We know that when we operate a population scale solution, these are some of the things we cannot ignore. And our solution has to meet the scale challenges, as well as at the same time, it has to be low latency. So these are some of the fundamental concepts that we need to set at the outset when we have the conversation for the opportunities that AI provides. We believe that though AI has an adversarial impact on the identity platform, it also brings in a lot of opportunity to defend that platform. So in 2019, we started this journey with this belief that we can leverage AI to protect this identity platform. We came up with, initially we started with the finger liveness project. Today, if you see, this project has fructified, has matured, and at scale, we perform liveness of each and every fingerprint that enters our platform for verification. That's a very highly recognized success story, and inferencing at population scale has also been recognized in the industry. Now, this is our success story around finger, but what about the new threats that is emerging because of the AI? Are we really prepared? Yes, to some extent, to ensure the trust around the identity platform, but we need to do a bit more on this. We need to, so that is the collaborative work that we are seeking with the industry, so that we develop next generation models to identify the frauds around the authentication, around the identity, and prevent while it is occurring. That is something we are seeking partnership. And my colleague, Zach, will be covering that in detail. Now, moving on from liveness, similarly on the biometric side, the classical biometric deduplication technology, perhaps it has come to its end of life. Today, the classical algorithms are being replaced with AI-based approach. Machine learning models are, what we have observed, that machine learning models are better at performing accurate matching of the biometrics. Now, how do we ensure those models are free from bias, free from any kind of, say, it it has to be secure, as well as it has to ensure that there is a trust around the matching process. So these are some of the work that, as a collaborative effort, we need to undertake with the industry. Same as OCR. I'm sure today, if you have seen this hall, there are a lot of stalls around the document processing. We also, as an identity provider, when somebody gets enrolled into our ecosystem or into our platform, we do verification based on the documents that it provides. So verifying those documents at scale, and also the kind of the diverse set of documents that we get, some of them in English and most of them in local language. How do we interpret that and ensure that the person who is getting onboarded to the platform or doing an update to its claim, it is a trusted process. So these are the, again, collaborative effort that we are seeking at this place. Next is the voice assistance. So on the voice front, we believe that this is going to be a key enabler for us in improvising our connect with the residents. So we will demonstrate some of the work that has been done. We are one of the early adopters of sovereign models that is being developed within this country on voice front, and we have implemented them in order to detect any kind of fraud and reach out to the resident at that point of time and intimate about or taking a confirmation around the event. So this is something we will be demonstrating, but this is just a story that we just started. Perhaps we need to scale it out with richer set of models or the technology that is likely to come. Now, I mentioned what has worked for us so far and what is to be done. Definitely, we have been seeing a good amount of success on liveness, whether it is finger liveness or it is face liveness. Also, the detecting fraud at scale related to biometric capture, whether it is capture of the fingerprint or face or iris, we have been successful in detecting them with the help of AI. But again, this is a game wherein we need to be ahead of the race. Otherwise, somebody will try and bring down an identity platform. I was mentioning about the voice. On the voice side, as I said, this is a new channel that we are leveraging to connect with our residents. If you look at today, the sovereign models that we have in our country, they're good at communicating with the residents in their local language, following the dialects and the language, right? So we have leveraged some of them. We'll just showcase one demonstration. In this demonstration, what we are doing, whenever there is an authentication request comes to our platform, we detect whether this is a fraudulent attempt or the resident is impacted because these biometrics are not matching. There are multiple attempts we are seeing. And at that point of time, we are reaching out to the resident to take a confirmation. This is an out-of-band confirmation that we are trying to take from the resident. Excuse me, audio please.
नमस्ते विवेक, मैं आधार मित्र हूँ। क्या आपने 12 सितंबर 2024 को HDFC बैंक में फिंगर ऑथेंटिकेशन करवाया था?
नहीं, ये तो मैंने नहीं किया था।
हमें बताने के लिए धन्यवाद। क्या आप HDFC बैंक में इस ट्रांजैक्शन को सूचित करना चाहेंगे?
हाँ, उन्हें प्लीज़ बताइए।
आपकी सहमति के लिए धन्यवाद। हम HDFC बैंक को सूचित करेंगे।
थैंक यू।
आपके समय और फीडबैक के लिए धन्यवाद।
Right. So this is where we are using a sovereign model of one of our startups and we have integrated.
हर्षित, मैं आधार से कॉल कर रही हूँ। क्या आप अपने रीसेंट एनरोलमेंट के बारे में कुछ सवालों के जवाब दे सकती हैं?
हाँ, दे सकता हूँ, बताइए।
क्या आप 12 सितंबर 2024 को आधार सेंटर गए थे?
हाँ गया था।
क्या आपके एनरोलमेंट नंबर के आखिरी 4 डिजिट्स 1342 हैं?
হ্যাঁ এটাই ছিল।
আপনি কি ভেরিফাই করতে পারবেন যে আপনি কোন আধার সেন্টার গিয়েছিলেন, তার নাম আর লোকেশনটা?
আমি এইচডিএফসি ব্যাংক গিয়েছিলাম।
আপনি শুধু সেন্টার নেমটাই বলেছেন। এইচডিএফসি ব্যাংক কোথায় আছে তার এরিয়া আর সিটিটাও বলবেন।
হ্যাঁ ব্যাঙ্গালোরে হোয়াইটফিল্ড।
এনরোলমেন্ট প্রসেস এর সময় কি আপনার কিছু পে করতে হয়েছিল?
हाँ 300 रुपये लिए थे।
क्या आपने एनरोलमेंट प्रोसेस के दौरान 300 रुपीस पे किए थे? ये कंफर्म करें।
हाँ हाँ।
आपने अपनी अपॉइंटमेंट कब बुक की थी?
এই মোটামুটি 2 সপ্তাহ আগে।
আপনি সেন্টারে মোট কত সময় কাটিয়েছিলেন?
2 ঘন্টা।
এনরোলমেন্ট সেন্টার আপনার ওভারঅল এক্সপিরিয়েন্স কেমন লেগেছে? 1 বা 5 স্কেল রেট করবেন।
मैं 3 दूंगा क्योंकि काफ़ी टाइम लगा था।
आपका एक्सपीरियंस हमारे साथ शेयर करने के लिए थैंक यू।
The second demonstration is this is getting triggered whenever you visit any enrollment center of UIDI for any update or enrollment process. Based on a sampling, we are triggering this voice feedback call, and our objective is to identify the experience that resident has the experience of the resident, and that is again it happens within 5 minutes of the transaction. And imagine this power of this technology. Today it is very much doable to reach out to every person who's visiting the UIDI enrollment center and take a feedback. And that helps us in preserving that trust around the platform. It will also ensure us to verify whether there is any ground level fraud happening in terms of overcharging for a free transaction that is being offered by UIDI, or that is a fixed price transaction being offered by UIDI. As I said, voice as a capability, we have just started. This technology is improving day by day. On 18th of this month, we saw 3 of our AI startups in this country coming up with the models. This technology is fast evolving, and our objective over here is to leverage some of them and build capability which will help us to improvise our engagement with the citizens. So with this, I will now hand over to Sridharji, wherein he will come and explain or discuss some of the ideas wherein AI can be leveraged for a better engaging experience of the citizen with our platform. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Sabuji. So the theme, recurring theme at the summit so far you have been hearing is all about how there's so much energy that is consumed to build these frontier models. There is a data point floating that there is enough energy consumed by all the leading frontier models that it can power the entire African continent's electricity needs for a year. So we are hearing these things. The important point that we want to focus on and what we care about at UIDI is what the conference team says, welfare for all, happiness for all. So as a designer and user experience, something we care for here, one of the most fundamental barriers for inclusion is language. So what we realize is that we also know from a lot of the training of languages that the intelligence, the inference layer at the pre-training is 99% in English. Not just English, but probably American English. And so there is a lot of underrepresentation, and that's why there's a strong case even for our sovereign models and things like that. So language is something we are focusing not just because of AI, but we realize that that's an important thing even for our 133 crore users who come in every day and don't understand some of the technical nature of some of the documents or verification or even messages like what is authorization and certain terms. So we spoke with a lot of users and we found there are all kind of challenges people have which are cognitive. And so that is some of the things we try to address. So that is the first issue which we feel if we address strongly through all the interfaces at various touch points of UIDI across the country, that would be make that everything more accessible. The second issue I want to get to is in terms of how we are approaching it is something we are looking at is what happens from a cognitive load point of view. There are multilingual solutions, but it's like when you go to a site, I mean, we have seen the data that 99% of the users are still sticking to the English, though we have all the major languages represented, and why are people not using it? So if you look at it, there is the fMRI studies, and cognitive neuroscience has shown that actually there are multiple pathways in the cognition, that how we process information as a human. And the audio, the sound takes a different pathway, and sight, visual cortex dominates most of our processing and our energy as we scroll things. So there is a cognitive loads cost, and there's a switch, which is why there is another reason why people are not able to use multilingual and multimodal so conveniently. And so that is something we are trying to keep in mind as we improve. And so using these thoughts, some of the early experiments, like Sabutji was saying, we are trying out is something like a document when you want to do an address update. There are some 30 plus documents that you could look at and consider. So the person who doesn't understand which document, can the system, the interface explain? So the question they have in mind is, kya likha hai, which reads as, what is it? What is written here? What is there in this document? How do I understand it? And so the advantage we have with the intelligence layer of AI, which is something we want to explore, is the ability to infer context of that user locally on that device and then speak out to them. So some of these are some experiments, and we have some demos of these we are trying to build. And so you will see some of these demos. So even in our site, we want to bring in, these are some future looking ideas. So if you look at most language things, there is a small button where you switch between English or another language, whatever your preferred language is. But what we want to try out, and it's in a very early stage, is if I can use a formal language, which is like English, and associate with a bilingual language, which has an explainer. So when I hover on it, I should be able to, it should tell me, okay, what do I find out here in this site? So it should be able to explain. I think that is a huge benefit that AI offers. And so these are some of the directions we are thinking in terms of improving inclusion, accessibility for a very heterogeneous population. So I think what are the opportunities, and like Sabutji said, we invite industry and experts to collaborate and help us with some of these. And I would request my colleague Zach to show you the path and how you could work with UIDI. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be able to do this on behalf of UIDI, and thanks for joining. So when we are here, we feel like an AI organization, but it's not wrong. We have AI already, UID.ai. So we can call ourselves an AI-first organization. Okay. while sir was talking about the ideas to implementation, I just want to talk about few initiatives that we have been trying to get started, which might be useful for the community at large. But just before that, I just have a question. How many of you, a show of hands please, if you have used AI to free yourself up, maybe write an email, okay. Okay, that's at least 70% of the audience, thanks. You had done this, you raised your hands because you were intending to free yourself up. And how many of you actually became free because of that? Well, that is not even 20%. Now, this is what this is what is the AI paradox we are talking about, right? We think that we are going to achieve something, but there's a flip side to it, right? When it comes to identity, it's the same problem. We actually have a lot of opportunities with AI, but we also see a lot of challenges, like Sabur sir just said, and it is a shared responsibility. That means UIDI might not do everything themselves. It has to be done by the ecosystem, right? And I'm sure that can be done if we do due diligence to any verification, any authentication that is done, it can be done really well. While we are here, we keep listening to a lot of ideas related to AI, related to address update. I'm not able to do this, I'm not able to do that. It's good, but could that actually be done at the, at the source itself? It could be, and that's what I think AI implementation in the edge really helps, right? Okay, so we actually see a lot of companies who are AI companies who want to work closely with us. And what we are doing now is make innovation possible from the community itself, right? And I think it's a very famous word that we use, open innovation. Open innovation is done not by a single organization, but done by the ecosystem. And I just want to tell you how we are making it possible. While the core work would be done by UIDI, the other augmented work can be done by the ecosystem. So just a few initiatives. We call it ID-a-thon, and ID-a-thon just rebranded as ID-a-thon. Recently, we did launch an update to our old Aadhaar app. We call it the Aadhaar app. And I think if most of you have not installed it, please do that. It has a huge benefit to what you'll be able to get once you start using it. And we're not going to explain that today. It is not about the Aadhaar app, but please feel to reach out to us if you have doubts. The Ideathon aims to bring ideas. We create an ecosystem called the verification ecosystem, or the OVSCs. OVSCs stand for offline verification seeking entities. So we used to do authentication all this while. Now we are actually also creating a verification ecosystem to do verification through the Aadhaar app. So when you go to a hotel, people are still asking you to provide your Aadhaar card for identity. You don't probably have to do that in future. You just go scan a QR, it becomes like a UPI transaction. You scan a QR, you share the details, you approve the details you're going to share, maybe your name and address, and it goes to the backend and it is secured there. There is no paper, it is paperless, right? And this is not just a hotel thing. It could be done in multiple sectors. We did something to bring out the use cases. And I think there's a huge opportunity for AI to do a fantastic job if there are a lot more ideas. The other thing for AI community is we always keep saying that we need data. And what UIDA has done is they have put the anonymized data sets completely out into the data.gov portal, which can be analyzed. You could probably get a lot of insights on top of which you can actually build AI solutions. So these two things, please keep a lookout. We have shortlisted entities. We also have reward programs associated with it. Maybe this would be a great way to start working in these areas on using the data hackathons as well as the ideathons. We also have done something very unique, which probably no identity provider has done. We've opened a sandbox through which you can actually get access to the APIs, test your application, integrate it, test it, and see whether you can build a new workflow process for your own organization. And this is something that you'll have to also tell us what you need from a sandbox. We have started it. It is open to you. You can register now. Just go to the sandbox.uida.gov.in and start using it. So this is something that we would like you to use. And I think in future, we would have more challenges in the sandbox. For example, we are looking at contactless biometrics. We're looking at a possible way to kind of counter deepfakes. How do we get the AI community to work with us closely to address deepfakes? We also did one more very, very unique thing. It's called SITA. It's called the Scheme for Innovation and Technology Association with Aadhaar. It is a funded program. We are piloting it today. And this is for both the startups as well as the academia. And what is the advantage is, if you look at today in India, we are lacking an identity technology ecosystem to be developed. And it is something when you see so many people, so many AI companies, I think it is a huge possibility for companies to add value to identity. And it can be done through a program like this. And I would request if there's any companies who would like to work closely with us, please look at this program. There would be a lot of new cohorts coming, new problem statements coming. We have 3 problem statements just for information. For example, for academia, we have a presentation attack detection. What research can be done for countering presentation attacks? Please look up what the term means. Contactless fingerprints. We've always been touch-based, right? We've been using fingerprints for a touch-based sensor. But right now, can I use a mobile phone to kind of authenticate? We're looking at building something in addition to the face. We're also looking at face liveness. Very important to make sure that you're alive and you're the person that's authenticating and verifying. So all these challenges are now open. It's not just solved alone by UIDI, it's solved together. So just want to touch upon this. While we build this new app, I would request you to kindly install the app. But we would like to see a lot more use cases coming, lot more innovations coming, and lot more secure, workflows to be created in every sector. So this is what I'd like you to like you to take back and just leave with a thought that it's a shared responsibility that we have, and please work closely with us because now a lot is open for you to work together with us. Yes?
Thank you to all our speakers for that extremely insightful session. It truly opened up new perspectives on Aadhaar, its many dimensions, its evolving architecture, and what it offers for the AI ecosystem. Before we go into the next session, to give a glimpse into the Aadhaar journey and the tremendous impact it has created across the country, it is my privilege to invite Shri Bhuvanesh Kumar IAS, CEO, Unique Identification Authority of India, to the stage. Sir, may I request you to please take the stage.
Thank you, Albert. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you, my colleagues from the Technology Center at Bangalore, DG Tanushri Uday Burma, Brother Prasad Sabut, and other colleagues who have made presentation. I'm sure many of you would be interested in some of these activities. And apart from what has been explained, there is another scheme called SITA, which is basically for Scheme for Innovation on Technology based on Aadhaar. So many of these startups are engaged with us. Academia is associated with us. In fact, we recently had a discussion, and our authority chairperson and members are keen to expand the scope of SITA and include more participation in that, and maybe look at doing grant funding as well as equity funding for these startups to look at the innovations that can happen along with the Aadhaar. Now, there are, the topic which we started with, the identity paradox. Actually, to me, many a times, Aadhaar has a lot of myths and there are many paradoxes. So how many of you are having Aadhaar here? Almost everybody has an Aadhaar. How many of you remember your Aadhaar? Remember your Aadhaar. I'm asking the 12 digits. Oh, very large number of people remember it. I'm quite surprised, pleasantly surprised. Most people think Aadhaar is a card, and that's how they treat it. And that's unfortunate. It's a paradoxical situation. Aadhaar is not supposed to be a card. Aadhaar is actually only a 12-digit number, and that is how it was supposed to be. But over the years, it has become a document instead of a number. By law, it's still a number, not a document, but it is being mostly used as a document. Wherever you go, people will say, show me your Aadhaar, show me your Aadhaar. On the other hand, people should tell me your Aadhaar. Right? Nobody says, tell me your Aadhaar. Everybody says, show me your Aadhaar. And most of the people use the Aadhaar in terms of photocopies. And they keep your 12-digit Aadhaar number. On the other hand, that is not the way it is supposed to be. The identity verification of an individual should happen only by telling the number, and then the requesting entity is able to get the information about you as an individual. They should not retain the number. The number belongs to you, and it should be retained by you only and nobody else. And there is a risk when you part with your number and give it to somebody else, and somebody else now has multiple factors of information about you. They have your Aadhaar number, and they also have the demographic information like the name, the date of birth, and also your image, which makes it actually prone to risk. And then there are possibilities of frauds happening. And that's why we thought of changing the way Aadhaar is being used and brought the Aadhaar app. And through the Aadhaar app, when Aadhaar is shared, actually Aadhaar is not shared. It's only the demographic information which is shared. And that is what proves the identity. The purpose of having a foundational identity was to prove your identity and do nothing else. So this is one of the first paradoxes or the myths about Aadhaar. The second myth which goes with Aadhaar in most circumstances, and recently we found when one of the government authorities issued a notification telling the students to update their father's name in Aadhaar. And let me tell you, there is no column for father's name in Aadhaar. There is no such column. It doesn't contain father's name. So some of you might be putting it in the address field, saying son of so-and-so, care of so-and-so in the address field. But there is no field. Because Aadhaar, as Sabut was mentioning, it's a huge organization in terms of the numbers, but it's a very lean organization in terms of data. The total number of fields in Aadhaar is about 9. That's all. So there are 3 fields of the biometrics: the face, fingerprints, and iris. These are the 3 biometric fields which are captured once, never go out of the system, remain securely as one single packet, and that is one of the limitations of open. And they're kept as one single packet. They are not separated. The iris and fingerprints and the face are never separated from one another. They remain together as one single unit. And that's it. That is what makes it secure. And the other 4 fields, which are name, gender, date of birth, and address, are the demographic information, and 2 fields are optional, and mobile and email. So if you want to provide the mobile and email, it is up to you. If you don't want to provide, it still works. So the second myth is that Aadhaar has got a lot of data. No, it's a very, very data lean organization. It works very securely. Biometrics, once brought into a system, never go out. The law says so. The biometrics cannot be shared with anybody under any circumstances. And it is used as one-to-one authentication. That means if you tell your Aadhaar number to any requesting entity and also give one of the biometrics or maybe mobile OTP, so 2 attributes on the basis of which identity authentication or verification will happen. The requesting entity makes a request back-to-back to UIDAI. Now, this is something which is limiting. That if Aadhaar authentication has to be happen, then the Aadhaar number holder has to provide that information to the requesting entity, and then the requesting entity has to make a request back-to-back to UIDAI, and this is limiting in terms of numbers. This is limiting in terms of the infrastructure required, the audits, the security, and all those challenges, and the onboarding process being long. And that is why it was very important to uh, democratize the identity verification rather than keeping that power with UIDI only all the time and giving authentication from here. We changed the thought process and we said we are going to provide verified credentials to Aadhaar number holders digitally in the Aadhaar app, and then they can share these verified credentials to all those entities which are looking for identity verification without their need to coming back to UIDI. They need not come. The offline verification seeking entities need not come to UIDI for any kind of an identity verification. UIDI has been ahead of the technology curve most of the times, and right from the beginning has been using artificial intelligence in many ways. Of course, with the new large language models and generative AI coming into picture, things have changed and the progress has been very, very fast. Many of these things have been adopted into the system, and you saw through demonstrations, including the customer relation management, the biometric fraud detection, and the liveness checking. In fact, the next step could be the legacy document verification. We've seen many of the people who have provided us the documents as proof of identity or proof of address have given us documents which are really not genuine. They could be either fake or could be fraudulently obtained. So they can be both. The document doesn't exist at all, or it exists but has been obtained wrongly. And they have submitted those documents. So that's a great area where new work can happen. And I'm sure many of you would have worked on those sites where you have done image matchings, and the image matching softwares through AI, use of AI are available. And that is one area we are looking at as a potential area for future collaborations. The face liveness, the in-house development of face authentication has been done by UIDI, but at the same time, we recognize the potential risks in face authentication and people trying to bypass that system and trying to do various kinds of presentation attacks through the videos or through masks and all those things. So we engaged with some of the startups. They have done wonderful work, but I'm sure there is more scope in this area. The world is asking for the face recognition system developed by UIDI, and recently we have opened it up. This is the first time we are opening the SDK of our face RD application to the world, and we are saying that, okay, we will work together and also look at the pads, the presentation attack side, and work with the startups, all those who are in this area, to make it far more stronger so that the liveness is not manipulated and people are able to use it safely and securely. So some of these areas are extremely important areas, and AI is going to play a very, very important role in all of these. So whatever we can do in-house, I think other than that, we have to go beyond and look at people who can participate. Today only we received actually a query and interest from the Anusandhan National Research Foundation, ANRF. So ANRF is keen to do research jointly with UIDI, and there are, I think, more than 20 odd entities which are already working in the sandbox, which was displayed here. The UIDI sandbox, which we opened last year in April, it has been in existence, and many of the authentication user agencies and the banks and fintechs and biometric entities, they're all doing research. In fact, many of you perhaps may not be even knowing, we have roughly 2 crore anonymized biometric data, which we can use for testing any kind of application, biometric identification system applications, ABIS applications. And in case any of you are working on those areas, then you can come back, you can bring your models. We will obviously cannot share this data with anybody, but this data is available in a sandbox. You bring your model into the sandbox, you run the model, you see the results, you fine tune it, take your results and your model back without taking the data away. And that's what is available. I think it's a strong platform which is available for people to come and work on. And this may be unique. I don't think anybody else in the world will be having that kind of a data to work on. And so if you're working on any of the AI models on the biometrics, you're most welcome. Without taking too much of time, and because we have the panelists and we are going to hear them, I really want to thank you all for showing your keen interest, coming this afternoon to this session, joining with us, and please do write to us if there is anything that we have not been able to tell you and you still have queries. We'll be happy to answer you back. Thank you so much. Jain.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your thoughts and showing us what Aadhaar could mean for us and what it has in store for us in the coming days. As we continue this conversation on AI and its impact on ID tech and the digital public infrastructure, we now move to what promises to be a highly engaging and thought-provoking panel discussion. We are privileged to have with us eminent leaders from across the ID tech and DPI landscape, innovators, policymakers, academicians, and technology builders who are shaping the future of trusted digital identity. Before I invite the panelists, we'll take 2 minutes for the stage to be set, and as soon as it is done, we will be inviting the panelists over. It is my honor to invite our distinguished panelists to the stage. First, may I request our moderator for the day, Mr. Daniel Abadi, Head of Technology and Partnerships at the for Digital Public Infrastructure and former Undersecretary of Digital Government, Government of Argentina, to kindly join us on the stage. I would also like to invite the other panelists, Srimati Tanushree Deb Verma IAS, Deputy Director General, Technology Development, Unique Identification Authority of India, Shri Kedar Kulkarni, Co-founder and CEO of Hyperverge, Shri Mayank Vatsa, Professor at the Indian Institute of Technology, Jodhpur, and Shri Varun Chatterjee, Co-founder and CTO of 7 Sense. Please join the panel. And with that, now I hand over the session to you, Mr. Dan.
Thank you. Hello, good afternoon to everyone. First of all, congratulations to UIDI for showing the progress and showing things. Actually, it's really hard to do things in government, and no matter that India is one of the leading countries in this space, we need to celebrate that, so congratulations again. So I think we're going to take these next 30 minutes to chat about AI basically ID Tech. We got 4 great panelists, people that really know their things and they're really good on what they do. So I'm gonna go directly to the questions, and if we have time, we're gonna have open to questions. So, Professor Mayak, as AI becomes more powerful, both improving authentication and creating risks like deepfakes, how is UIDI thinking about staying ahead while ensuring trust in the system?
So, with respect to UIDI or Aadhaar, this has been in the discussions, not now, means deepfakes is like in 2019, 2020 onwards, that has become more prevalent. But when we were discussing about establishing such a system in 2009, 2010 timeframe, when no one was talking about being responsible, being trustworthy, we were actually discussing about how to make this entire system secure, trustworthy, reliable, foolproof, right? So since 2009, 2010 timeframe, we ensured that the systems that we develop, or the entire ecosystem that is developed, is reliable, is trustworthy. And that's where the whole design principles have been in Aadhaar, I would say in the bloodstream of Aadhaar. The whole ecosystem has to, the way design has been built, that the whole ecosystem has to evolve with respect to being trustworthy. Now, with respect to the recent threats, or of the newer threats that are coming in, Aadhaar has been discussing how to actually evolve in some of the things that you have seen over here today. And in fact, as a committee, we are also discussing that what is the future, and in the future, how we will evolve the whole being more trustworthy, more secure, and how to actually follow the 7 sutras of being responsible.
That's great, and especially on the idea of designing principles from the beginning, like designing for scale instead of scaling what you have tests. And I'm gonna go into industry, but then go into the private sector people say. So I heard you talk about, creating, models in UDI that work with high accuracy on biometrics to prevent fraud. Can you walk us through that strategy and to build on top of what Professor had told?
Sure. So right from the beginning, we understood the importance of going paperless and presence-less meant being able to identify the person even though they were not there. My previous colleague mentioned that earlier the proof of presence was treated by the eye and your agent. But how much can you trust your agent on source? So slowly becoming paperless and presence-less had to be done through machines. And that's how you would achieve scale. So right from the beginning, we ensured that the quality of the biometrics that you collect, the segmentation, what part of the biometrics you are capturing, the saving of the same through vectorized formats, and thereafter making sure that what you are collecting is live, and then making sure what you have collected is deduplicated across a very large gallery, and then you identify, okay, this is the unique person that has come into my system. Later, when he comes for authentication, you make sure that over a very high accuracy rate, you can detect him to be live when he places his finger, iris, or his face, and then ensure with high accuracy and very low false positive rates, making sure that he's identified with himself using his Aadhaar number. So the entire life cycle of capturing, liveness detection, saving, and then matching has completely been done in-house and made sure with high accuracy rates, inclusive, simple design, and making sure fake proof.
That's great. And you talk about trust and accuracy, and I want to go into now some risks, like going to Kedar. Like across the market you have working, like which fraud trend is evolving the fastest right now? And why should we be paying attention to it?
Yeah, I think before I start, I think a huge round of applause. There are 2 systems that anywhere you go in the world, you always feel proud about. One is Aadhaar, UIDI. I think everywhere you go in the world, you feel proud as an Indian that every other system you feel it's like at least 3 years or 5 years behind us, and the other is UPI, right? I think someone was explaining me crypto, and you can do these instant transactions and all. I say, have you come to India? You can do a 10 rupee transaction, and you don't get charged anything. So I think we are, leading the world in terms of digital public infrastructure. A big credit to all people here. Hyperverge works with financial services organizations across the world, in India, Southeast Asia, Africa, US. One of the things that we see is usually fraud is something that starts in one part of the world and slowly we see it moving to other parts of the world. Deepfake currently is the biggest fraud movement that we see. We saw it start in Indonesia about 2 years back. We work very closely with Grab and some entities there. And we started seeing these attacks there. We started building for it. And now we start seeing attacks in India. I really like to spend a lot of time with these teams because we want to be as close to the user. So recently with one of the largest private banks, we saw this very interesting case where a person has taken a perfect picture. He's smiling and everything is good. And it looks like he has taken it with his front camera. But then when you closely watch the picture, both his hands are behind him. So you're like, how is he taking a front pic because the only way you are allowed to go forward is when you can use the front camera of your cell phone. So how is he using the front camera of a cell phone and having both his hands at the back? So these are the kind of interesting cases that we see. The other kind of frauds that we are now starting to see in India. So in any crime, usually, we say, hey, it's not the outsiders. Family has an equal role to play in crimes, right? A lot of times we believe crimes happen with people where an outsider is involved. So this is a classic example. The wife would be sleeping and the husband needs a loan and he doesn't want to tell her he needs a loan. But, very quickly he would go put her Aadhaar number and just take a picture of her, or she might be cooking. And he would just say, just look at this for 1 minute. I just need, I'm doing some application. So her intention is not to get a loan, but she ends up being the person who ends up on whose name, on whose credit rating the loan happens, right? So we usually see these trends. For some reason, we see them emerging in Southeast Asia a lot more and then moving to places like India. The other funny thing that I see with financial services organizations, right? I think Indian marriages are extremely famous, right? We have big fat Indian weddings. And it always goes two ways, right? Either you have a big budget in mind and then you share it with your parents and if they are financing it, eventually a lot of things get cut down. Or it goes the other way around, you start with a small project and it goes beyond size. So one of the common threads that we observe is organizations start with, I need all protection. And usually this protection in the AI world, if you think about, there is no one engine that is preventing fraud, right? Like a Mozart Vienna orchestra where there are 30 people playing. In case of Hyperverge, we have about 40 engines that are working in the background to prevent frauds, right? Like liveness, presentation attacks, deep fakes, quality checks that we mentioned, document forgery checks. So there are 40 engines that are working in the background, and every time we call each one of them, it costs us. So we give, we can give full protection at this price. And usually people say, this is all good, but I don't think I need all this protection. I can pay you only so much. So we say, if you can pay me only so much, in your marriage, only 5 people can play. You can't have 35 people playing. And it gets started like that. But eventually, in another month's time, 6 months' time, we are sitting with the fraud team. They are saying, how can Hyperverge pass all of these cases? All of these are frauds. How did you allow this to happen? We said, see, all of these checks we have recommended. These are the 6 emails that we have sent you saying, please enable them. You have not enabled them. Then the fraud team says, you know what, I'm going to make the business and procurement team enable all of this. So eventually it all gets enabled and the whole orchestra plays and the wedding goes well. But that's the pattern that we see. So the message on fraud to organizations is, like in a defense situation, right? We don't start preparing once the attack happens. We can prepare, we should have it tested. Maybe we are not rolling it out full scale, but we should have them ready to fire, right? At any point, if we need them to fire, we should have all our systems ready to fire. So that's the key message on fraud that I've seen.
Yeah, perfect. And it's super interesting how a trend, it's like deepfake is 2 years. now in time. It's not it's like the last month. So, and moving now into Barun on, like, with all the benefits of biometrics as an enabler for digital identities, for identity systems, like, what are some of the challenges around using biometrics for identity proofing? Like, how do you envision this?
Yeah, so I'm coming at this from a slightly different angle. My startup, 7sense, is dealing with privacy enhancing technologies. And while we do deal with biometrics, our angle is to enable, to keep biometrics as an enabler, but still protect the biometrics. So the biggest challenge is, I think maybe I can talk about 3 challenges. So the first challenge is that biometrics are not revocable or renewable, right? If you have your fingerprint, you have your face, you have your iris, you cannot change it, right? So while there are stringent protections that organizations like UIDAI have around that data, it is still a risk, inherent risk, that despite all the protections, despite all the security, there is still a risk that if that data is lost, it can never be regained again. It cannot be changed. You cannot change your face, you cannot change your fingerprint. Ideally, you would want to. Ideally, you would want your biometrics to serve just like a password. So if my password is compromised, I can change my password. But I can't change my biometrics. So this is one core challenge, and it is not insurmountable. As a matter of fact, there are standards that are out there. There are organizations that are working in this area of privacy enhancing technologies, where you have something known as a renewable biometric reference. So instead of a biometric reference being a template, being a feature vector, you have a renewable biometric reference where you take the biometric and you add some entropy to it, and you create a representation which is not biometric. So in our case, of course, in the case of privacy enhancing technologies, you can have biometric derived representations, or you can have completely different representations. So in the case of 7sense, we mold, or rather we operate at the intersection of machine learning, cryptography, and biometrics. So face is our primary factor, though we can also protect other biometric factors with the face. And what we do is we derive a key from the face, and we encrypt your PII with it, and then at the point of verification, if we can derive the key to decrypt it, then through the act of decryption, you are verified. So this is bringing together biometrics, cryptography, and machine learning to create this renewable biometric system which protects biometric templates, yet still enables the system to use biometrics. The second one that I see the challenge is that with privacy legislation like the DPDPA and like we've had with GDPR and PDPA in Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, there is always a purpose limitation around the collection of biometrics, right? Organizations like UIDAI have the Aadhaar Act under which they operate, and biometric data is always collected for very specific purposes. For example, in the Aadhaar Act, it is for 2 specific purposes. One is for the creation of the Aadhaar, and the other one is for the verification of the Aadhaar. And therefore, that biometric data is sacrosanct. It lives within the central identity data repository. It is never allowed to go outside. But with privacy enhancing technologies, that same biometric data can be used to enable organizations to interact with that biometric data as an enabler, but still without having access to the direct biometric data. So my biometric data for Hyperverge will be different. My biometric data for IIT will be different, for PAN will be different, for banks will be different. And each of these will be able to verify me with my biometrics without touching my biometrics. And of course, the basic attributes have been already enabled in the Aadhaar app, where now I can present my verifiable credential to these organizations. However, the act of verifying via biometrics is also enabled with offline verification seeking entities now. But there are other cases. For example, we worked in rural India where 1:1 verification was not feasible for attendance taking, because there are 50 people, there are 10 people that you need to take the attendance for. And if you go and say, what is your Aadhaar number? I want to take your picture. Okay, you are verified. You enter, 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 enter. So 1:n is obviously not within the mandate of Aadhaar. But once you have that 1:1 verification with Aadhaar, privacy enhancing technologies like ours can enable even 1:n in certain circumstances. So I think I was going to speak about 3 challenges, but I think I'll stop with just 2 because I've taken up a lot of time, and I'll pass it back to Dan.
Thank you. I think that's super interesting, and I want to keep in the biometrics part and come back to you, Tanushree. Like, you've been working a lot on biometrics deduplication. How you envision this as a DPI?
So what we have done over the years is we have partnered with various organizations to make sure that the technology has not been limited to UIDAI. With the collaboration with MOSIP, with collaboration with many other countries we see the Kenyan delegation right here, and many more countries. Even today, our CEO had to step out because he had a meeting with Bolivia in the morning. He has hosted Vice President of Seychelles. And we have been leading the Global South, and not just that, developing countries and developed countries alike, and explaining to them and hand-holding them to adopt this technology. So that consultative approach and collaborative approach has always been there. In terms of the technology, we have always been an open source house, and we made sure that the technologies that we adopted were from the community and brought back to the community. Where we are going now is, like our CEO mentioned in his previous talk, that some of the technologies were very core to private companies. In fact, UIDAI itself today uses 3 vendors to use the deduplication process. But we have now the capability of doing it in-house, and we have got very good results. At least over the 18+ population, we have accuracies much better than the best of the companies. We are now trying to expand that model and make sure that for the use cases of UIDAI, where we collect biometrics above 5 years of age, it expands at the same scale and better. While we are in that process, we are consulting with, we want to reach out to companies who can become the conduits or help us in consulting with various other countries who want to adopt this technology. Open source it, but at the same time give the support for adoption, if required for technology diffusion, as we call it. So we are hoping that we'll be able to take it out to the world, the ABIS as we call it, and use it as a DPI right out of India's stack.
Thank you. So, I'm gonna go now to Professor Maya, and then keeping into Aadhaar and then going more to the industry view. So, running a government service, it's like critical infrastructure. Like, once you're live, like, you deliver services to citizens, you cannot have a shutdown because people don't access to services. So how do you work in UDI on to approach fairness, inclusion, and responsible governance as you include AI into the authentication process? Like, how do you embed the safeguards now that AI has come to enhance authentication, let's say it that way?
So we have to understand now that UIDAI has more than 15 years of history now. And when I say history, it's like memory. Right? We have a lot of experience. And I'll actually quote an interesting example where again, 2009, 2010 time frame, we were involved and we were doing the POC. And when we realized that when we reached to a particular state, the face quality match was not working, because the way the quality thresholds were set, they were set for a particular sub-geography within India. But when we reach to the another state, the quality thresholds were like rejecting all the faces. And given, as CEO mentioned, Bureji mentioned that all the three biometric modalities are packed together. If one is rejected, the entire packet is rejected. So we had to actually go back to the field and to figure out what is wrong, what went wrong. So initially we set the thresholds way too high, the quality parameters way too high. Then we looked at the parameters, when we looked at all the values from that state, what was wrong, we adjusted it. And these kinds of adjustments would have happened over the years in UIDI across different modalities, different application domains. So it's a huge amount of corpus of knowledge that UIDI has. So now, and when we talk about artificial intelligence, growth of artificial intelligence, we have to also understand that AI, use of AI in biometrics and Aadhaar as a whole would be incomplete if we don't use this knowledge, right? And that's where this whole open ecosystem that Aadhaar has is very important to take a look at what learnings Aadhaar has collected over the years, has solved so many problems, and like we all are accessing Aadhaar on a day in, day out basis, like millions of transactions through Aadhaar is happening. So this whole ecosystem has now so much knowledge that the domain context-driven artificial intelligence can really take the Aadhaar to the next step. And that's what we are actually looking at, what is the future of Aadhaar and how we go forward. And that's where this whole knowledge base would be very, very useful.
Great.
And I just
yes,
want to
please.
come in here. So like Professor Mayank was mentioning, when we train our models, we have the advantage of temporal shifts. The person has joined UIDI as a 5-year-old kid. Over next 15 years, he has done his biometric updates, and we know exactly how his face progresses. So when UIDI says that I can match faces over years of person's aging, we actually mean it, because nobody else will have a progression of a person from 5 to 15, because we've been functional for 15 years, and again at 15 to 30, and therefore, in fact, irrespective of that, we use face much more reliably than fingers and irises, because they age much more faster in terms of matching comparison. So even though we use all the three parameters together, but face has a very high matching rate even over the years. In fact, for elderly, the fingers deteriorate, but their face is very, very matchable till they become 90, 99.
Totally agree. I always joke around with Pramod when I say I come from a country that has digital identity ID like forever, but for me, like it's 45 million people, it's like your sandbox.
So that's like
More
our
or
UAT
less.
testing, yeah.
So yeah, so I always joke about that. But going into the knowledge of the ecosystem, so I'm going to get our, what have you seen consistently driving meaningful conversion gains without materially increasing the risk of fraud? Like,
Yeah, I think great question. If we are extremely strict, no user will go through. And if we are extremely lenient, we will convert a lot of users, but a lot of them would be fraud. So it's a balance. The one thing I always feel, right, if you see the ecosystem, we have the end user who is trying to open an account or who is trying to get access to some financial service. Then we have the regulated entity. Then we have a tech company, which could be like Hyperverge. We have Government of India. We have regulator. And then we also have the digital public infrastructure. So it's so many stakeholders are involved in this process. And every stakeholder is bringing some important boundary conditions. The regulator is bringing boundary conditions on fraud, etc., etc. Something that I observed, right, when we are a startup, we are sitting out of client's office, we are seeing every application, and we are solving every problem. Somewhere as you have 10 clients, you start sitting out of your office more. When you have 50 clients, then a lot of times you are just looking at Excel sheets and telling the board, this is the number this quarter, that is the number that quarter. So even the role I play, I felt at a certain scale, you are managing so many internal problems that we somehow forget whom do we serve. And if we calmly look at it, whom do we all serve? We finally serve that end user, the common Indian who is trying to avail the services, right? When there are so many stakeholders, it's very difficult to keep a track that that's the person we are serving. So when I say conversion rate, right? Conversion rate for a registered entity may mean that if we improve it by 1%, their top line increases by like $1 million, right? For someone like a mid-size NBFC, it may increase by $1 million. But if we think of it from an end user's perspective, right? It could be a aged pensioner who is sitting at the home. It could be someone who is extremely excited that they will get onto a brokerage and they will start their trading right now in a tier 3. So it is all of these people that we are serving. My biggest lesson has been every week spend time with whom do you serve, right? So the rule for me breaks down to, if I am meeting, because I can't directly meet the customer, I can't run around on the road and say who is doing Aadhaar authentication, I need to check it, or who is doing KYC and I need to sit with you. But one easy way to do it is at least sit out of offices of banks, NBFCs, brokerages, and look at data, right? Personally look at data, not what my team is telling me, not what their team is telling me, just calmly looking at data, seeing, hey, what's the problem? What are the people, who are the people who are stuck in the queue right now? And I think the amount of insights that gives, where I see the customer facing problems directly, we all are people who can then say, if this is a problem for this customer, who else is it a problem for? And we can go out there and solve it. So every time I feel I spend time on conversion rate, I'm helping that Indian who is doing onboarding, or the Southeast Asian who is doing onboarding, who doesn't have the voice to reach me directly.
Perfect. And that's, you get me. So you mentioned KYC, which is now your client, and I want to go to Varun because I was reading previous to the session and defining the question with all of you, like so I'm going to talk about agents that we haven't mentioned in this session, but now we are like in an agent world, and we're going into the agents world. Like, how do you see like delegation of identity and know your agent beside know your client? Or, like, how are we going to navigate this?
So this is, this is a very future-looking sort of question, because we have just started using agentic AI. This year, we are already, even us 7 Cents, we started building code using agents, right? So the question is, like, when an agent, an AI agent is acting on your behalf, in the example of code, for example, when you're checking in, it's your identity that is checking in that code. Ostensibly, that code is written by you. So I'm just using this technical example, but as agentic use becomes more prevalent, agents will do more, right? They will act on your behalf to open bank accounts. They will act on your behalf to write emails. And this is coming, right? I mean, we have to pay attention to it now. So if an agent is acting on your behalf, then the agent has to somehow represent you. And today, I have an identity as an Aadhaar holder. But now if I have agents, agentic AI, which is opening a bank account for me, which is booking my travels for me, I don't want to share my Aadhaar number through that agent maybe, right? And how does that agent get authenticated? And that agent tomorrow may spawn even more agents. So again, going back to the technical example, I have personally used a team of agents where I had one team lead, one agent acting as a UI UX developer, one agent acting as an Android developer, one agent acting as an iOS developer, and I said, here are my specs, go write the software. And this entire software, which would have taken about 6 months to develop, took about maybe 2 hours. And from the UI, UX, iOS app, Android app, back end, front end, everything was done in 2 hours. It would have taken 4 to 6 months. And this is going to become even more pervasive in other industries. Just now, the technology industry is as an early adopter, but this will happen. This is coming. So how does the delegation of identity work, right? I have an Aadhaar number, or I have some root of trust. And how do I say that, okay, you are my agent, and you can act on my behalf to open a bank account. How does the bank trust that identity? So for this, you need a chain of trust. And again, I will go back a little bit to what 7sense does, which is bringing machine learning and cryptography together. So the internet does this really well. You have certificate authorities. Those are the root of trust. So even if you have a company in India or have bid for a government tender, you actually get this hardware security module which contains your private key. Now you use this private key to sign something, and you also, with this private key, you get a digital certificate. So this is exactly how the internet also works. There are certificate authorities. They will say, okay, hyperverge.com belongs to such and such registered entity. We have verified the entity. Therefore, we can give you an SSL certificate for hyperverge.com. And thereafter, when I interact with hyperverge.com, I can verify that certificate, or rather my browser verifies that certificate. And now, if you see that there is a delegation of identity already happening, where you got maybe the hyperverge certificate from an organization like, I don't know, DigiCert or Entrust, and they did that initial verification, and then they gave you that certificate. And there can be some intermediary certificate authorities in this chain as well. So the same technology can apply for agents as well, where you have the root certificate, which is the Aadhaar certificate, which issues me my identity certificate, and I issue my agent an identity certificate, and that agent can go and issue sub-agents identity certificates. And this entire chain of trust is verifiable through cryptography. Another interesting thing that this brings into the fray is something that is being overlooked at the moment, and it will become increasingly important over the next 10 to 20 years, which is post-quantum cryptography. So today's identity systems, the cryptography they are using is often RSA or elliptic curve, or basically these are technologies that are broken by advanced quantum computers by something known as Shor's algorithm. So in the future, if you have a public key and a sufficiently powerful quantum computer, from the public key, you will be able to derive a private key. So all cryptography is broken in the future. So what are organizations rather, let me not say organizations, what are states doing? I mean, behind the scenes, every state has some espionage unit. States are harnessing data, right? China is looking at data, US is looking at data, just they're capturing the data. They can't decrypt it right now. Your bank transactions that are happening, every interaction that you have today is being recorded somewhere. And that data will become plain text data in maybe 10 or 20 years. So this is another important theme that ID systems need to pick up, is to bring in post-quantum cryptography into the mix. Your verifiable credential that resides in the Aadhaar app, will be signed by a traditional algorithm today. But NIST has already standardized a few algorithms. NIST is the National Institute of Standards Technology, USA. They have already certified and standardized a few algorithms such as module lattice key encapsulation mechanism, module lattice digital signing algorithm. These are already standards, and they can be adopted today. And 7sense is also working with the Internet Engineering Task Force to define the standards of these certificates. But in the case of 7sense, what is unique is that these certificates that I'm talking about contain a public key that is derived from a face. So now we have all the benefits of public key infrastructure, from document signing, from transaction authentication, from passwordless login. You have all the applications that are available on the internet that rely on cryptography, but now we bring biometrics into the fray. And all of those transactions, signing, encryption, decryption, passwordless login, can all use your face as an authentication factor and use post-quantum cryptography in the chain of trust.
Thank you. I'm curious, I'm conscious about time. I think we have passed the time. I want to thank our great panelists, like a great vision from the public sector, from the private sector. So Big round of applause for them, and thank you so much.
Dan, can I add something as a closing comment?
Yes, please.
Okay. So for all of us, I
But
think...
you got 1 minute.
Yeah, I'll
What's
take
the-
30 seconds. Sorry for the previous long monologues. I think the first, I have a 3.5-year-old, and I think even when she was very small, maybe 6 months or a year old, midnight, it's 2 a.m., 3 a.m., she recognizes her mother even without opening her eyes, right? As in at night, she wakes up,
10
drinks
seconds.
milk, and sleeps off. And imagine a day when your mother doesn't recognize you, right? You will be horrified, right? Like, because that's one person you expect, no matter who else doesn't recognize you, your mom should
Wait,
recognize you.
the Alzheimer panel, it's in the other pavilion.
Yeah.
Let's go with that.
No, I feel every time, a user is not recognized, they're a legitimate user and they are facing friction with identity of any kind, right? You want to open an account, something like that. In a way, it's like your mother not recognizing you. In India, we call India as Bharat Mata, so we call it a mother. So I think the friction, if we can make it, we should constantly be on a mission to reduce the friction. So I think Mother India should always recognize her kids.
Great. Thank you. I think I think the narrative is basically how Aadhaar had created an ecosystem where we can have innovators creating services and all this. But again, congrats to Aadhaar. I know you do it so simple and tell it so simple and beautiful and smart, but there's like 15 years of hard work. And so thank you all, and thank you all.
Thank you, everyone,
please.
for being a part of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much to our esteemed panelists and the distinguished panel for enriching us with that insightful session. As a token of our appreciation, I request Tanushree ma'am to please hand the mementos from UIDA to our distinguished panel.
I'll take that to Triple TV.
Thank you so much once again. Can I request the panels just come forward for a group photo? Thank you, thank you. Thank you once again to all the speakers, to the panel, to all of you who have joined here. We look to shape the next phase of the trusted digital identity in India. Thank you and have a wonderful evening ahead.